A week ago, Friday night, I kind of gently reprimanded granddaughter Brianna. Now, she started out, everything was great because we were watching while her parents were out, and when dinner was over, she hopped up and cleared the table and was beginning to clean up, which was great. But then she turned on the faucet on full blast, and it was just going and going and going while she was rearranging plates, just simply rinse them off to put them into the dishwasher. Now, granted, I was just back from Cuba, so I was a little bit sensitive about water. I had remembered just a few days earlier, I had put off taking a shower just to conserve water, and out of respect for the fellow travelers, it was time for me to shower, and I went in, no water. Water is precious and carefully doled out in that land, as in most lands on the planet. So I said, Brianna, just look at how much water you're wasting. You don't need to leave the faucet running. Oh, Grandpa. Water. We are surrounded by it and very rarely experience a shortage. Now, sure, many are nostalgic around here of the days when you could swim in Spa Creek and all the other fingers of the Chesapeake that many now avoid a bit due to contaminants. And many, including some of our midst, have spent a good amount of their lifetime trying to clean up our beloved Chesapeake. But a shortage of water, that's something we hardly know. Yet in Cuba, the water flow is frequently interrupted. In Syria, drought sent thousands of young men into the cities in search of jobs, and in their poverty and disparity, well, they found groups like ISIS and others who turned on Assad. Yes, I've read that climate change is the backstory to the civil war in Syria. Israel and Palestine? Well, the next explosion may be all about water. And to our misfortune, climate change got politicized in our divisive setting, even to the point that when the Defense Department presented their proposal for money to retrofit part of Norfolk against rising waters, they said, we cannot use the word climate change because that might scuttle our chances in Congress. Water, land, air. Today is the 48th anniversary of Earth Day. And I invite you to enter into prayer for our Mother Earth. My hope is that we can move from fear to wonder, from indifference to awe. Well, these are grand epic stories, this beginning of Genesis, chapters 1 and 2. In this first story, humans are created last, unlike the second story, where man is created first and then names animals and woman created later. But in this first creation story, it's on the sixth day, and men and women created in the image of God. And as the writer announces, it was very good. Now, when the beginning, in verse 1, when God separated light from darkness, it was good. It was good when the waters moved apart to create dry land, and good again when birds and fish and even the sea monsters were created. But when humankind arrived on the scene, it was very good. What an incredibly tender moment in God's image, and very good. That is our original blessing. Now, in some settings, it's popular to speak of creation out of nothing, ex nihilo. But that's not the biblical story. For in the Bible, creation comes from God, out of God, in the image of God. as the Scot theologian George MacDonald put it, not out of nothing, but out of God's endless glory. So it's important to tell the honest truth about struggles and sorrows and sin, as we do in the prayer confession. But it's equally important to remember that what comes first in the story is blessing. Original sin, well, that comes later in the story, often misunderstood. But the story begins with original blessing. For God created them male and female in the image of God, and it was very good. Thank you, Eleanor. Blessed? Really? Even though the egocentric abusers of power attract most of the attention in the media, it's important to remember that a greater number of our brothers and sisters suffer from being beaten down or put down, not feeling blessed at all. You see that in the posture of people, the slumped shoulders, the eyes cast down when you're speaking, or you hear about it when a sentence begins, "Oh, do you think?" Or, "Well, I don't know," or, "I'm not so sure." Think back of how many important movements in our history began with the simple affirmation that you are alive and blessed. When Martin Luther King Jr. met with the garbage strikers, it was all around the theme, "I am a man." Not a cog in a machine, "I am a man." And then later, the chant, "I am somebody." And I remember the early days in the civil rights movements where a leader would just come out and just say, "I am somebody, I am somebody," just reclaiming the rights of humanity. Oftentimes when I'm around a person who's struggling or in need, I'll have a prayer that begins something like this. "Lord, it's hard right now, but life is a good and precious gift. Thank you. Now, Lord, we need your help." We begin with the gift of life. And how sweet it is when one of you turns to the other and says, "You are beautiful. You are beautiful." Yes, you are created in the image of God. And that's good. No, not just good. Very good. It is good, this creation entrusted to us. Vulnerable like every life. Our land and waters are fragile. Friends from church who moved to Florida are moving a second time, not too many years later. They took stock of the water and decided that 8 feet above the high tide mark may not do it in the future of Florida, so they're moving to 40 feet. In Florida terms, that's a mountain. Yet again, our local newspaper featured on front page the issue of rising waters around City Dock. Administrators at the Naval Academy don't talk about if, but when the buildings will be flooded again. What is so remarkably hard to manage is the fact that we know so much about the ailments of land and water, but lack the will to change. In terms of need, Matthew Fox so helpfully points out that a good part of the world, what we at times call the third world, suffers from an impoverishment of the body. Basic resources, land, water, food, medical supplies, scarce. Yet in our setting, we suffer from an impoverishment of the soul. As he writes, the means for a just existence are within our grasp, but our wills, our social structures, and our imaginations have not yet proven adequate for the struggle. An impoverishment of the soul. And so, we are here. Worship. It's all about spirit and soul and imagination. Worship is about moving beyond the self to the wonder and mystery of the divine. Worship is all about breaking the boundaries of self to experience the other in the pew, the other in the street, the other who is the divine other, our God, who is Creator. Worship is about wasting an hour in the eyes of many in the planet in order to enter into a different realm. Worship is about facing fear and naming sorrow in order to move beyond it into the presence of the holy. As a young teen, I would lie on my bed and stare up at the stars and just be creeped out. I found that very disconcerting because there I was as a young kid and trying to imagine the distance of the stars, and I felt incredibly small, and then I concluded insignificant, and my skin would crawl. You had that feeling where you're just that out of whack, and my skin would crawl. You know what's curious about stargazing? It's so different for different people. Some are amazed, some are scared. Some find their place within the expanse of the universe. Others get lost. But looking at the expanse of space, the psalmist uttered a prayer of adoration. O Lord, our sovereign, how majestic is your name in all the earth. Now, I think she knew something well of God's mercy because she refers to it, saying that when I look to the heavens, as the song goes on, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars that you have established, what are human beings that you are mindful of them? Mortals, that you care for them. Not lost, but cared for. O Lord, our sovereign, how majestic is your name in all the earth. Well, over the decades, my stargazing has slowly turned from fear to wonder, although in reality, those two experiences are not too far apart from one another. An ever-expanding universe with light coming from us from hundreds or thousands of light years away. My God, are you that big? Lord, it's amazing. That grand and expansive. As another psalmist asked, where can I go from your spirit? Or where can I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, you are there. And even the darkness is not dark to you. Take a look at the photographs around the sanctuary. These are from the Hubble spacecraft. Gentle, beautiful reminders of the expanse of the universe and the wonder of it all. Just imagine. Roughly 13.7 billion years ago, all that exists was in the form of a singularity that then exploded. We call it the Big Bang. Exploded with the gift of creativity. Now, if that explosion had been just a little bit slower, everything would have eventually collapsed back in on itself. And if it had been just a little bit faster, everything would just completely have scattered throughout time and space. But it was just right. And galaxies were formed, and stars, and a planet like ours. Maybe more, but certainly the one that we call home, that had just the right mix of light and chemicals to bring forth life. First, single cells, then in the million years of development, life that could swim and crawl and eventually stand on two legs and reason and think, imagine, love, and worship. For what reason? Well, that may not be a reasonable question. To love, to imagine, to create, to be in communion with creation, one another, and the Creator. There may be no reason for your existence, yet you exist. It is pure gift. O Lord, our sovereign, how majestic is your name in all the earth. Your name that is beyond all names. Your name that includes all names. How majestic is your name that holds all of creation. Abraham Heschel taught that there are three ways to respond to the gift of life. We can exploit it, we can enjoy it, or we may accept it with awe. As he also noted, awe is the beginning of wisdom. Well, as you know, we Presbyterians are deeply committed to serving the common good and finding our calling within efforts of justice and peacemaking. This takes us to the bedside of a dying friend, alongside the anguish of a person suffering from addiction, and then sends us out to all kinds of places of poverty and where justice is being sought. Yet behind it all are the gifts of wonder and awe that give us the power to do what we do and the passion to persevere. Worship is a fundamental gift that we offer each other and the world. For wonder is the seed of imagination. Awe is the source of wisdom. And gratitude, the ground of respect. Albert Einstein once concluded that the most beautiful thing we can experience is the mysterious. It is the source of all true art and science. He also once quipped that, I want to know how God created the world. I'm not interested in this or that phenomenon, in the spectrum of this or that element. I want to know God's thoughts. The rest are details. And Annie Dillard mused that the question from agnosticism is, who turned on the lights? The question from faith is, whatever for? For wonder, for mystery, for love. O Lord, our God, how majestic is your name in all the earth. Amen.